In this video, we delve into the mysteries and controversies about the location of Mount Sinai, a mountain of immense significance to Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Mount Sinai is an iconic peak, located in the south-central region of the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, and is an important place. In terms of religious and historical significance, Sinai, the Holy Mountain, holds great importance in many traditions, cultures, and beliefs, such as Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Mount Sinai draws a large number of visitors, scientists, and adventurers. In addition to numerous religious devotees, in this video, we present the startling revelations that the researchers have discovered on Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is famous for housing Israel during their journey out of slavery in Egypt. However, many scientists and scholars have suggested several places, and the exact location of Mount Sinai is still under intense debate. Nevertheless, many scientists agree that the granite peak in the southern region of the Sinai Peninsula, between Israel and Egypt, is Mount Sinai. It rises 2,285 meters above sea level, and is considered the actual site by many scholars of major faith traditions, including Jews in Christianity and Islam pilgrims. Many scholars and hermits have visited Mount Sinai for 1,000 years. The earliest journeys being recorded were the visit by Eusebius of Caesarea in the 4th century, and Algeria's pilgrimage in 38338 for AD. Mount Sinai was a very famous pilgrimage destination during the early Messianic Christian era, with mystics including Paul the Apostle frequently visiting the monastery of St. Catherine. This Orthodox church was one of the oldest and continuously inhabited monasteries of Christians, with a library full of ancient manuscripts, including the Greek Code Sinaiticus of the Bible. Compared to Christianity, Mount Sinai's location in Judaism holds no strong connections because it was not the mountain, which was important inherently, but the God who inhabited it. After Torah was given and the covenant was established, it became just a mountain as the others are. But the people continued to speculate about its significance. As researchers explored and dug deep, some suggested that Mount Sinai was located, surprisingly, in Saudi Arabia, the founding place of the Islamic faith. Charles Becker suggested Mount Bergier to the northeast of the Gulf of Kabr, while Alois Musil and H. Philby hinted at Jabal Manifa being the potential Mount Sinai. A French scholar, Jean Koenig, suggested a volcanic peak of Halil, while Ron Wyatt, an American scholar expert in finding biblical locations, claimed that Mount Sinai is located in Jebel Lawz. What is remarkable about all of this is that Wyatt's skill in locating ancient sites has resulted in the discovery of a number of historical artifacts. Scholars are conflicted on whether the exodus from Egypt and the events at Mount Sinai actually happened. The theory about the location of Mount Sinai location in the land of Midian is based on the interpretation of Exodus 3:1. According to Wyatt, the real Mount Sinai is east of the path of the Red Sea crossing in modern-day Saudi Arabia. He claimed to have discovered it in Nawaba and the Gulf of Aqaba, the eastern branch of the Red Sea. In order to investigate and take pictures of the region, Wyatt and his 2 boys entered Saudi Arabia illegally in 1984. However, the Saudis seized them and detained them for 78 days as Israeli spies. They later returned to Saudi Arabia, this time legally on a treasure-hunting mission looking for the Mountain of God, Egyptian artifacts in the region, and the remnants of the great army of the Pharaoh. According to the scholars, the researchers have made an incredible discovery, but there was lacking in archaeological proof. Wyatt's research claimed to find that the famous mountain is the largest granite pile with petroglyphs of bears, cows, oxen, and bulls. He claimed it to be the Great Altar of Israel, and it was probably the one that was mentioned in the Golden Calf story. It was also explained by a Saudi archaeologist from Riyadh University, who said that these cows and bulls were Egyptian-style and were nowhere to be found in Saudi Arabia. According to the Bible, Mount Sinai is said to be in Saudi Arabia. According to Deuteronomy 9-21, a brook descends from the mountain, where Moses scattered the ashes of the golden calf. A significant water flow that cascades down the mountainside raises the possibility of supernatural intervention. The ancient watershed filled with polished boulders is evidence of a fast-moving stream that carved its path down the mountainside. Moses may have struck a rock with a crack in the center to send water to the thirsty nation, obstructing entry into the Promised Land. But scholars wonder if these signs are enough to consider the mountain to be Mount Sinai, and are conflicted about the photographs being insufficient evidence. The third possible site for Mount Sinai is in the Negev desert in Israel, between Petra and Kadesh Barnea. The scholars, led by Hawk Harcum, claimed that the ancient Israelites traveled directly across the Sinai Peninsula towards Petra in a straight line that led them to Negev Mountain. Teams of archaeologists and researchers found a large number of shrines, pillars, altars, and more than 40,000 rocking graves as proof of the existence of extensive religious activities. Another group of Israeli researchers proposed that Hakercoma is the biblical Mount Sinai, even though the peak of discovered religious activity predates the Exodus from Egypt, which is often dated between 1600 and 1200 BC. Israeli scholars argued using the additional archaeological data to support their argument, dated the Exodus from Egypt between 2350 and 2000 BC. Christians value Mount Sinai because it saw a number of horrific incidents involving the Israelites after they left Egypt. The Israelites came to the Sinai Peninsula after God spoke to Moses on the mountain after leaving Egypt. God called Moses and was informed that the ascent was forbidden and the area needed to be made sacred. Anyone breaking the law was immediately put to death. Meanwhile, the Israelites were impatient and began worshiping the golden calf. This enraged God, and he threatened to send a disaster to Moses' nation. Moses begged for mercy, and God gave the 10 Commandments and additional instructions. After speaking and reiterating the Lord's orders, Moses left the mountain. The commandments formed the basis of the Israelites' judicial framework for thousands of years. Now, the more controversial location for Mount Sinai is the crossing of the Red Sea. On their epic escape from Egyptians, this has been a topic of debate among researchers. But one popular theory by Thomas Research Foundation claims that the crossing occurred at the Gulf of Aqaba, according to Bible. When the Israelites discovered that they were trapped between the sea and the enemy's soldiers, they prayed to God to part the sea and allow them to pass safely through the sea. When the Egyptians attempted to follow them, the waves crashed back over them and crushed their chariots. The army ended up drowning in the Red Sea. In a documentary film, Finding the Mountain of Moses, the Real Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia, Ryan Melrose, a security expert, headed a team of researchers who presented their findings. Following the shreds of evidence highlighted in the documentary, the experts now consider that the radiocarbon dating establishes that the Red Sea was split for Moses, and the location of Mount Sinai is just 75 miles away from where they would have reached. After crossing the Red Sea, the position of the mountains seems to be in line with the Scottish idea concerning the mountain. The geography of the 5-mile-long beach, which appears to conform to the biblical tale, has also been investigated by specialists from the Doubting Thomas Research Foundation website. Dr. Glenn Fritz, the site, surrounded by mountains, was believed to provide enough room for the 3 million Israelis who fled Egypt. The Nueva Lambert Bridge, a natural formation, was discovered at a depth of 33 meters. Scholars believe unusual coral formations resemble chariots that would have sunk when the Red Sea crashed over Pharaoh. The site may soon be destroyed due to its proximity to the proposed Saudi megacity Neom, which is 33 times larger than New York. Scholars are divided on whether the Great Exodus from Egypt occurred, with different camps settling on dates that are up to 200 years apart. Some believe it happened around the 13th century BC, which falls under the Ramesside era or the 19th dynasty in Egypt. The biblical narrative of Israel's exodus from Egypt mentions Pithom, Ramses, and the Red Sea. The name Pyramisi had been abandoned by the start of Egypt's third intermediate period, around 1085 BCE, and would not be used again for a very long time. Archaeologists from the University of Chicago investigated the mortuary Temple of Aya and Harem-Hab, Egypt's last two pharaohs of the 18th dynasty, in western Thebes in the 1930s. The temple was constructed by Aya in the 14th century BCE. But after Horemheb became pharaoh, he extended it and erected his own Peti in its place. Later, during the reign of Ramses IV in the 12th century BC, the temple was destroyed. Researchers from the University of Chicago found a dwelling and a section of another house that belonged to individuals entrusted with tearing down the temple. Although it was constructed of wattle and daub, the house's layout resembles the four-room structure that was characteristic of Israelite homes during the Iron Age. Either Proto-Israelites or someone with intimate ties to Israel built the Theban house. The Honor Masterkan Amenoba is a categorized list of Egyptian terms, and the Onomasterkon Amenob is another piece of evidence concerning the Exodus. The Semitic place name at Bert, which relates to the Python Lakes, is found on a papyrus from the Third Intermediate Period. A hieroglyphic writing, called the Great Spios Artemisid's inscription, which dates to the 15th century BCE, makes the claim to be proof of the Exodus. The inscription is a royal declaration of Shepset's success, a legendary female pharaoh who dealt with immigrants, who ultimately neglected their duties. The narrative makes reference to the flooding devastation of the Israelites' footprints, which is a popular lie. The biblical text also offers strong support for the Exodus and hints at a history of slavery. The narrative of a people running away from degrading servitude indicates historically plausible parts, albeit this is not scientifically confirmed. The great Israeli archaeologist once remarked that, although the Exodus myth is probably a hoax, it has some truth. The debate over the location of Mount Sinai continues to captivate researchers and various religious scholars. Even though a lot of speculations were made, still no consensus has been reached, and the true identity of Mount Sinai remains uncertain. However, regardless of its location, the mountain's significance in religious history and the associated events continue to inspire.